Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now the last video, one of the last videos that we posted on this channel was geared towards our new journey as a homeschooling family, right? And I showed you how I was unboxing our Genesis curriculum. We started wetting our feet in the waters of the Genesis curriculum in the summer, right? But officially, full-time homeschooling started on September 4, I think. So we are about 2 weeks in. And after more than 2 weeks of engaging with the Genesis curriculum, we have come across some lessons that we are learning from our experience with the Genesis curriculum. So here are here's my feedback on the Genesis curriculum so far. All right, so here it is. Number one. The number one thing I have realized about the Genesis curriculum, it does not have a math component. It just does not have a math curriculum in it, and it just dawned on me when I started using it that I am not teaching the children math. So if you are thinking of using the Genesis curriculum from Easy Peasy All-in-One Homeschool.com, bear in mind that you will have to get a separate math curriculum, all right? But that's for the older group of children. The Easy Peasy offers a big step and a giant leap one that I'm using for my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old, which has math nicely laid out. But if you're gonna go with the original Genesis curriculum book for the children 7 and over, you will need a separate math curriculum. So that was the first and number one thing that I realized about Genesis curriculum, which I was kind of disappointed, but that's where it goes. So no math curriculum. All right. Number two, Hebrew. We have realized that the Hebrew is a little bit much for us. Okay, so after doing Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 in Hebrew, my daughter decided, okay, I think we need to just either slow it down or thin it out some more or just not do it at all. So she was able to grab a hold of Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, but we have decided to quit on the Hebrew for now until we can, get our bearings back on studying Hebrew. So the next tip that I have for you for using the Genesis curriculum is to involve your child in the reading. If you have a child who is a strong reader, please make the most of it and have that child read the points in the lesson outline and you engage in a discussion. I found that came in very handy for me when for the second week when I had a lot of chores to do, like in the kitchen. I just asked her to read and I would be doing the dishes and we'll be going through the lesson simultaneously. Not only was it saving on time, getting us to multitask, but she was also improving her reading skills and she was being more engaged in the lesson, and she would stop and she would share her points and say, oh, this is like this, mommy. And so I found that rather than reading to her all the time, which can get boring, I found that it's more engaging and stimulating for her to join in the reading and to lead the reading. So typically I let her read the science lesson and that really has been going well. So that's my other tip for using the Genesis curriculum. All right, now kind of connected to the previous point, the next thing I would encourage you to do if you're using the Genesis curriculum is to learn to change your location, which applies to homeschooling in general. Switching up your location helps to keep the mind fresh and you don't get bored sitting in one location. So changing the location could just simply mean, as we did, moving from our living room, which is where we mainly do our lessons, into the kitchen, and it was fun. It was fresh. The light in the kitchen was bright, and even my son made use of it. He had fun just sitting there doing some drawing, and then he showed me what he drew. It was different and it was rich. It added a richness to our homeschooling experience. So I would encourage you, change your location if you need some, to feel kind of refreshed in your lesson time. Now, The other point I want to make about using Genesis curriculum is that even though the lessons are clearly outlined, every point is there, you just read and do according to what you're reading, right? But don't be afraid to leave out the points that are either too weighty. Maybe you don't even think they're as stimulating as they could be for your children, or they're just not relevant. So you kind of go through, maybe like you do a week's review before you do your lessons, or you do it every night before you do it the following day, to just see which points you need to make. And what I do is just I go through and I put a check mark at the ones that I'm going to be incorporating into the lesson. Everything else, I just leave it out. So don't be afraid to leave out those points. You don't have to read. It doesn't have to be a laborious, tedious task to read through every single point that is there. They're there for your benefit, but at the same time, if they're not contributing to what you really want to accomplish in the lesson, you're free to leave them out. And I encourage you to go through before and check mark the points that you really want to incorporate in your lesson. And it really makes the lessons lighter. That's what I've experienced so far. One thing too I would want you to be aware of and to give you a heads up about for the Genesis curriculum is to look out for errors. Not errors that are going to be detrimental in terms of like facts that are going to ruin your science, like, oh my, what kind of error is this? But typo errors, probably some grammatical errors. Or I'll give you an example. When we were doing a social studies lesson that had to do with time and how we use BC and how we use AD, there was a point where I think the author Lee Giles, I think there should have been a BC instead of an AD. So just little things like those, just make sure you always have your wit about you, even though it's already done for you, right? Everything is there outlined, but kind of keep your wits about you so that you'll say, hey, I think a word is missing, or I think this should have been this. So just keep that in mind. And if you read the introduction to the book, to Genesis curriculum, you will find that she does advise us that if we find errors, we should contact her. So, I'm making notes of those, and eventually I'll be reaching out to her, say, I noticed these errors, or do you think it was an error, right? Just notify her. So she does give you that invitation, right? One thing that I do want to give a thumbs up for in Genesis curriculum is, as it suggests, it is based on the Bible. So every day there's a fresh Bible reading, which encourages reading because I have my child read it. And it encourages us to be in the scriptures every day. So there's a reading for every day, and there's a memory verse for every day. But alongside the point, the other point I want to make is, when you are doing the Bible section for Genesis curriculum, bear in mind it's not King James Version. Why do I say that? Because I prefer King James Version. I want my children to memorize scriptures from the King James Version. So the memory verses are presented in, I think it's English Standard Version. I'm not sure which version she uses. I'm sorry, I don't remember right now. But it's not KJV. So that's what I want to point out. That if you're doing your lessons, make sure you know which version you want the memory verses to be noted in, right? So I am sticking to King James Version, even though Genesis curriculum uses a different version. But hey, it's still the same reference, so we still use the reference that is presented in the lesson plan, but then we just make sure we read it directly from our Bible and memorize it and take it from there. Even some of the words that are used in the lesson, the vocabulary and in the spelling and handwriting, they are pulled from that version that Lee Giles uses in her curriculum, which I still work with. But just the Bible reading and the memory verse, I make sure that I use King James Version. Every other word, it's okay for them to learn, a different word. That's fine. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I don't consider myself an expert in Genesis curriculum by any means, but homeschooling does allow you to dive into something, and having begun a dive into Genesis curriculum, these are the things that I have realized stand out for me and are working for me and are not working for me. So if you're considering using it, hopefully these tips and heads up will kind of make you more aware of what you're getting into, and make you more prepared if you think you're going to still use it. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, share, leave your comments, and don't forget to check out our blog. That's myquiverful.com, and we'll see you in the next one.